All right, guys, how's it going? Mark again, and today I have a special guest.
Hi, Annalee. Do I look at this one? This is where I'll be looking.
Yeah, look at that.
Okay, perfect.
You're good. Let's ask the first question. Where are you from?
I'm from Mesa, Arizona. That's where I grew up.
Okay, and how was it growing up in Arizona?
It was pretty chill. I can't complain. I had everything I needed growing up. My parents were very old-fashioned. I grew up Catholic in a Mexican home with 2 older brothers and an older sister, but it was really fun. I feel like...
Do people have to ask you if you're Mexican?
Yes, all the time. They never believe me.
Do you speak Spanish?
Entiendo todo, pero no lo hablo muy bien. Necesito practicarlo.
See, that's good. Yeah, I mean, I don't speak that much Spanish either.
Yeah.
So, did you have both parents here?
Yes, they're still together.
Still together?
Yeah, I'm actually living with them right now. I moved out of Scottsdale in January, but I'll be moving back at the end of the month. But yeah, living with your parents is rough when you're about to turn 26, but they're just kind of stuck in their older ways, which is a little frustrating sometimes.
What makes it frustrating?
Just not getting the acceptance from them, from just sometimes I do feel a lot of love from my parents, but at times I feel like they just don't love me and accept me for who I am.
Okay. What makes you feel that way?
I've always had their support. Like, they've never pushed me to go in a specific direction. But I think the biggest thing right now is that my mom doesn't like that I smoke weed.
Okay.
But she's kind of just judgmental about that. But it makes me feel like no matter what I accomplish, it'll never be enough because I smoke weed. So in her eyes, it makes me a bad person.
It's understandable.
Yeah.
So is she also old-fashioned?
Yes, extremely. They grew up in Sonora in Mexico in a little town called Bevispe. And growing up, there was only a population of 800 people when they grew up. So their life was definitely a lot different than the way I grew up.
So how old are they when they moved here?
I want to say, I literally meant to ask them this before I came over. And I knew you were going to ask me this, but I'm assuming around mid-20s.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe 30s.
So you have siblings too, right?
Yes.
So who's the oldest?
My sister. We're 10 years apart.
10 years apart? Okay. So how old were your parents when they got together?
They were like 18, 19. They met when they were teenagers.
And that's when they also had their first kid? Mm-hmm. So you got to experience that kind of lifestyle. Most other people, they kind of grow up in broken homes or different experiences. I also came from a similar background. I have a brother who's 7 years older than me, and my parents, they got married at 18 and 20. And, seeing that, do you feel like that gave you an advantage to having both your parents compared to some people that you also grew up with that didn't really have that type of bond?
I would say it was definitely nice never having to go from one home to the other. Like, I always stayed at the same house. I've lived in the same house with my parents ever since I was like 2. I'm living there right now. It's still the same house. But wait, what was the question? Growing
up with both of your parents, do you feel like that bond helped you a lot more than seeing other people that didn't have that kind of household? Growing up, I'm pretty sure you didn't really see it because that's all you really knew. Yeah. That's all you're ever been exposed to. But when you leave the nest and you come back, you're kind of like a boomerang baby. You moved out once before, right? Mm-hmm. So when you kind of left, did you feel like that helped you out in a way? Because I know my parents, like I said, when I left, I didn't really appreciate all those things until, I moved out because I just thought everybody had both their parents. I thought everyone's dad kind of, paid for their car and they gave them gas if they got good grades. My mom did my laundry. She cooked all my food and she definitely did a lot. And I've definitely, seeing other people staying here with Dennis, who his dad, he committed suicide when he was 5. I could kind of see the things that he didn't get from having, a father around where I'm like, oh, okay, this thing's broken. You can fix it. But, I definitely kind of see where it's this makes sense now that I'm older. But as a kid, I just assumed that everyone's parents kind of just stepped in line and just was like, hey, this is how not to mess up. So that's my question to you is, did you feel like you also had an upper hand or an advantage to having both parents?
I think it just depends on the relationship you have with your parents, because I'll be honest, I don't have the deepest, most emotional connection with my parents, and that definitely makes me upset sometimes, but it just is what it is. And I do see our relationship changing in the future, maybe once I'm in my own space again, because I think being under their roof, it's just there's no chance for us to connect in that way.
Makes sense. You're always going to be their kid if you live with them.
Yeah.
I get you. I mean, there's times where I've kind of left and came back and left and came back.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed you do something called breath work now.
Yes.
What
and
is
you
that?
Experienced a session yesterday.
Yeah. So can you describe for those who don't know what breath work is?
Yes, so I'm a somatic breathwork practitioner. I discovered this specific practice about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, and it just completely changed my life. It connected me with my body, and that's something that I never had growing up. I feel like I just lived in my head like all the time, and I could never enjoy my life or just allow myself to be happy. And I feel like it changed the way I relate to other people, how I connect with others. I didn't really have like deep, meaningful connections in high school. Like after that, I spent a lot of time drinking and partying and not having like deep connections. Is all very surface level. And breath work, my first session, I've never experienced the feeling of love within my own body until my first session. And I also didn't realize how much pain or anger or grief or fears or self-doubt that I was actually carrying in my body on an energetic level. And then when you're holding on to these stuck energies, it blocks you from feeling things like joy, pleasure, bliss, peace. And I did not have a lot of that growing up. And I think the biggest thing that breathwork helped me with was definitely social anxiety. I had a huge fear of public speaking. And over the past year since becoming a practitioner, I really just like pushed myself and facilitated over 70 sessions, of course, to help other people, but in my own healing, it really just made me feel confident and like completely changed the way I like show up in the world, for sure.
And would you say that it helps you with a lot with, traumatic experiences?
For sure. So, I mean, pain, trauma from over the years can be stored in your body, like I said, on an energetic level. So the purpose of somatic breath work is to clear that out using your breath. So you do rounds of circulatory breathing throughout the session. You're lying down with your eyes closed. It's a very inward journey, and a facilitator is guiding you through the whole thing. There's music playing. The music I play is really loud. I love it. It's pretty intense. It's definitely uncomfortable, but through that discomfort, you have the opportunity to clear out any energies that aren't serving you. So that could be the energies of other people, that could be old beliefs, old patterns, past trauma, just anything that can be affecting your day-to-day relationships. And when you carry all of this inside of you, it just like completely affects the way and how you show up. And it can affect your relationships. You could just sabotage relationships and you don't even mean to. It's just such a release of so much bullshit.
What made you feel like you had social anxiety? Did you feel that more towards relationships with boys?
Just everybody. I was so afraid of everyone, everything. I was so in my head and not confident in like using my voice, for sure. And sorry, I'm not trying to cry.
You're fine. Go ahead.
I feel like last night's session was like so intense for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a group of 7 men and 8 women last night. And I don't know, I definitely feel a huge energetic shift in the world. Sorry, I just need to take a second.
You're fine. Take all the time you need. I can tell it means a lot to you since you're getting emotional, so it means a lot to me.
For sure. I was not expecting to cry, but I'm very, like, I don't know, I'm definitely an emotional person, and I just feel a lot. And I am grateful for this practice because I was able to release so much pain, and there's still so much that I know that's there, and your body and mind can like protect you and not want you, like sometimes your body just isn't ready to know certain information. And that's why you just always have to have grace for yourself, no matter where you are in your journey. But yeah, I was just like so shocked. Sorry, I had to get a tissue real quick. I think I've only told one of my friends this, but I think one of like a memory that stands out to me is I was...
I get you. It's probably hard to tell somebody this or say this to a camera because you've only told one person.
Yeah.
It's hard.
And it sounds so like silly. But I don't know, it just makes me sad for that girl because she didn't get to experience like a normal childhood. So I feel like that's why I have such like childlike energy now, because I'm like reliving the childhood that I didn't get to have because I was so uncomfortable in my body. And I started numbing with like alcohol and weed and getting into different substances by the time I was like 15. And that's not normal. And looking back, that's so not normal. But when you're in it, and when you're that age, you just think you know everything. Mm-hmm. And you think you're doing the right thing. And I don't know, I feel like shows like growing up glamorized like drinking and partying, so I just always thought like, oh, that's what life's about, like that's what you're supposed to do. But I don't know, I'm definitely happy. I'm so grateful that I found breathwork, because the kind of social anxiety I had when I was a kid, like whenever we'd go to Mexico, I would like hide behind my mom. I never wanted to speak Spanish. I was like so embarrassed. I remember one time in like elementary school, my brother like walked in on me practicing how to go over to the neighbor's house and just saying like, hi, I'm just checking, like knock knock, can Brandy play today? And I was just like practicing that in the mirror, because I just like was like that scared to speak that I couldn't even like knock on someone's door. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I feel like that's definitely why I started getting into like drugs and alcohol, because obviously that kind of makes those feelings go away and gives you like this false sense of confidence. But now I've been sober from alcohol for like 470 something days now, and I've like never been more confident in social settings, like in myself, in my body, just like day to day. It's definitely one of the best things that I could have done for myself.
So would you say the worst place to be is in your own head?
1,000%. Like you want to live in your body. You want to like experience life like from your heart.
Because now you have more wisdom, you're older. Do you feel like if you were to have to relive those experiences with the person you are today to who you were back then, that you would be able to understand what those problems are?
I don't know, you're just like so young and you don't even know like how trauma affects the body until like time goes on, and then it just really starts fucking up your day-to-day life, and it's like you can't even like go on anymore until you like find how to release it. And it could be somatic breath work, it could be through like talk therapy. I know that works for some people. It definitely doesn't work for me. I tried it like twice and I feel like it just made me get in my head. Like after my 2 therapy sessions I had, I got like sent into a spiral. Like talking about what happened doesn't really help me in my experience, but actually like putting in the work and somatically releasing like pain and anger like out of the body and not carrying it within you is really what changed it for me.
So would you say that breath work is more of a form of therapy, or is it a form of coping? Because I feel like some people, like you said, with alcohol, they cope because they don't want to deal with pain. Do you feel like people can go either way when it comes to breath work? Is it coping or therapy?
It's definitely a form of healing, I would say. Yeah, self-healing. You gain a lot of insight. You can gain a lot of clarity. And you just physically remove stress from the body. And after a session, you feel lighter. You feel, you know what the next steps you need to take are. Like, how was your experience coming out of yesterday's session? How did you feel?
So when I first did it, because I recorded the first time, I didn't really experience it. And I kind of like saw what people were doing. I'm like, okay, this looks a little confusing in a way, because I'm like seeing somebody, it looks like they're having an exorcism. The other person's just like screaming and yelling and hitting the ground. And I'm just like, there's no way that something can get this intense. And then I lay there, and I'm kind of hearing people do their thing. And, I'm trying to be serious about it. I don't like to like make fun of people or anything, but, you're trying not to laugh in a way, because you're just like, what's going on here? It's so foreign and new. But I think after like 30 minutes, I eventually learned to let go. And it was kind of like, like a runner's high. I was like, okay, like now things are kind of hitting me differently after just, breathing and breathing and breathing. And then after a while, like it does hit you in a way. You do feel like a form of release, and the things that were hitting me were like past relationships, certain breakups, friends dying, and, a lot of things that I didn't really think of for a while that were like just kind of popping up, where I'm like, okay, if not this, then what? And, it's like, oh, I could have done something differently back then, or, you know, the what ifs and everything of what could have been of certain situations, where now it is what it is. You know, you got to learn to realize that life is always going to have ups and downs, and the world is going to move with or without you. And I just felt like, okay, I got to focus on what I can control rather than what I can't control, and letting go of the things that I can't control were other people. It's like, okay, not everyone's going to like you, and you got to learn to be okay with that. And, you know, I think growing up, kind of like you know, like I didn't grow up speaking Spanish. My grandparents speak fluent Spanish. I'm fourth generation, but my dad speaks fluent Spanish, but he also didn't speak fluent Spanish till he had to travel and he had to work in most of South America. And I traveled a lot. You know, I've been to Puerto Rico, I've been to Spain, I went to Cuba, I've been a bunch of parts of Mexico, and some words mean something totally different, like the word coger. I was like, you know, coger here means to have sex, but coger in like Spain and Cuba and like, you know, all these other countries, it means to grab. So I kept hearing things where I'm like, oh, coger mi miga, coger mi coche, coger plato, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
You know, but I knew already because someone explained it to me, but after I'm like in those countries hearing it, I was like, okay, this is different. And I didn't leave the country till I turned 25. In a way, I thought this was all I got exposed to, kind of like how you said earlier, where it's just like, oh, you're drinking and partying. I didn't do that in my teenage youth. I was too busy with sports. They were strict on me. You know, I think one of those experiences that kind of came up in the breathwork session was an experience I had where it was the most difficult loss of my childhood. There's a thing in California, it's called CIF, and I was on the wrestling team, and it was my sophomore year, and it was the year that I never won a single match, and everybody was upset at me, and they always put me last. And I remember there was this one time we had to go against this school. It was Cyprus. You know, I was last again, and we were like neck and neck. It's like, if I win, we're gonna go to CIF. And the kid I had to go against was horrible, but I was always trapped in my own head. I was creating problems that aren't even there, and my heart rate would just go up and up, like the closer it would get. And it's like I forgot everything, and then I just lost. Your grandparents are there, your parents are there, your friends are there, your teammates are there, your coach is there, and everybody just like sees you lose, and it's like you're there on your own. It's not like it's a team thing. I mean, it was a team thing, but for that certain moment, it wasn't a team thing. And I lost, and then I had to go on the bus, and I'm just like trying to like not hear somebody say like, you lost it for us, and someone said it, and then I broke down. And you know, breaking down to that, like it wasn't the biggest life or death situation I had, but emotionally it's like everything just hits you. It's like there's no room to escape. Like you're in this bus and it was like the longest bus ride. And I'm just like, dude, I totally should have won that match. You know, to us, it was like the most important thing. Like we're kids, we don't know anything else. And like, you know, it's like you ruin this. I don't want to say you ruined the opportunity, but we didn't get the opportunity to go. We were the better team. We were the better school. It's just we were not as, you know, it wasn't all on me after what the coach said, but I just felt like in a way he kind of just defended me from like looking stupid at the time. But, you know, it was a team thing. And I felt like I kind of relived that moment in breathwork where I'm like, dude, that was a very hard time. But if it wasn't for that time, I wouldn't have experienced that kind of pain. And I feel like sometimes you learn more about yourself in times of pain and suffering. Where it's like, okay, I have to perform. Like, I can't quit now. Like, I can't just walk away from this because everyone's just going to be like, that's the kid who left. That's the kid who quit. And you're going to be in that bus for the rest of your life. So I felt like, you know what? I'm going to continue with the sport. And then, you know, I went into college. And then in college, as a team, they were all state champions. But I was just a red shirt. And then I got injured. And then that was my career as that. And to go back on your story where it kind of goes to, I kind of didn't cope with partying like some of my other friends did who left, who kind of, they quit their senior year and they were a year older than me, and I stuck around. One of my teammates, he died. He was drinking and driving later on in life. He was 25 and he crashed into a pillar, and that hit all of us. Like we all kind of reunited, but you know, they all quit their senior year, and I finished. I finished my 4 years. And I think for those guys who quit, they were trapped in that room for the rest of their lives. Like it was just, they were always talking about the good old days when they had it who they used to be. And it's like, dude, relax. Like high school's over, let it go. Like there's a whole world out there now. But I feel like to them, I think because they didn't have anything positive to have therapy or cope with, like they just kind of started drinking and partying. So in a way, like I was so strict with that and kind of always feeling like I had pressure to perform. It kept me away from drugs and alcohol until college. So like once I kind of, you know, became an adult and stuff and kind of went to college, that's how I kind of came across Arizona State. Like you went to school here too, right?
I actually went to college for 6 weeks and then I dropped out. I went to MCC, I think, but just wasn't for me. I definitely took way too many classes than I could handle. And then, I was just over it. And then the next semester, I went to aesthetic school and got my esthetician license.
Okay.
So definitely a little bit of a different college experience, I guess. But I don't know. I worked a lot between 18 and 20. I mean, I'm still working a lot, but I was self-employed from in my teens. So having a lot of freedom at that age can be a little bit dangerous, but it was definitely fun just getting to do what I wanted.
Do you feel like you partied more when you were a kid or when you were an adult?
Definitely as a kid. So my partying days were probably 16 to 21. And then by the time I turned 21, that's when I started becoming a little bit more sober curious, drinking less. That's definitely when I started smoking a lot more weed. So I definitely just preferred that over alcohol. But yeah.
So having a lot of freedom as an adult, did you feel like you got over the partying stage, or you just kind of wanted to grow up and do something else?
Yeah, I just really didn't like the way alcohol made me feel. I always kind of felt out of place when I'd be going out to the club, or since I'm so sensitive, seeing other people around the city so fucked up and on drugs. I don't love being in those environments, but I was exposed to so much at such a young age. So I think it was just I woke up a little earlier.
Do you feel like it was a difficult transition from getting away from those certain friends who led you down that path?
For sure. It's definitely an extremely lonely path, especially the first year of getting sober from alcohol, in my own experience. But it's worth it in the end. There's still friends that I've reconnected with from before, and it's that's how you know it's a true friend, when you're just able to reconnect and years go by and it's you still love each other and are able to have a conversation, joke around, laugh. But yeah, it's definitely lonely at first, and you're kind of just doing a lot of healing, a lot of inner work. I mean, that's what I did definitely all of 2023. I felt like I spent most of my time alone, other than facilitating breath work. That was kind of my social hour, but other than that, I was doing lashes and brows in a little room by myself. So it was just me and another client. It was never me interacting with others on a day-to-day basis.
So what was a bigger grind, the esthetician work or the breath work?
Definitely lashes and brows. Breathwork does not feel like a grind at all. That's just totally my passion. I love doing it. I love facilitating. With lashes and brows, when I was first starting out, I started out of my parents' house, and then I eventually had my own space in Tempe, and I lived there for 4 years. It was a really cool live work unit. So I had a 500 square foot studio space on the bottom, and my apartment was on top. So this was when I got this apartment right before I turned 21. So I just had so much fun. I was doing lashes sometimes 8, 9, 10 hours a day, seeing so many clients. But I wasn't working 7 days a week. It was usually 4, 5. But yeah, that was definitely a grind for sure.
Did you have any friends who passed away from drug abuse?
I've known of girls in my childhood, but we kind of stopped being friends after junior high. I did have one of my very close childhood friends pass away in an accident and a razor. And that one was definitely hard. I think that was a big part of my spiritual journey, because I carried so much guilt for never going to her funeral. And I was just I felt like I had no connection to God or source or the universe. I didn't understand spirituality at all. And this was around COVID. And during this time, I was also going to online school to be an integrative health coach, a holistic health coach. So that's when I was doing lashes, I'm so grateful for that job, because when COVID was going on, people were so weird and quiet and not talking to each other. So I would just listen to podcasts for 8-10 hours a day. So then that's when I really started getting into health and wellness and being introduced to different practitioners or healers and just gaining all this knowledge. And eventually that led me to cannabis meditation. And that is such a cool experience. This is something that I'll be facilitating a lot more as well this year. In a cannabis meditation, everyone goes, it's a group setting in a room all together. And we used to do these at my studio in Tempe. And I didn't have any neighbors. So it was just the coolest spot. You could be so loud, play loud music. We'd hotbox the room. But you just go in there, you set an intention, and then we bless the medicine. We all consume together. And then everyone lies down. And the facilitator guides you through a full body meditation. And it is such an energetic experience. And that's when I had done a cannabis meditation meditation. I think during my facilitator training, I also did the cannabis meditation facilitator training. And that's when I finally got to connect with my friend Paulina. And that's when my introduction to spirituality for sure. And I just saw her in the meditation and I just felt her glowing energy. She looked like the sun and I just saw her face and she was just like smiling and it was just like a sense of relief. And yeah, I definitely love her and miss her a lot. She was definitely, we knew each other since first grade and we had to carpool to high school together. Like my mom would take us there or her mom would take us there and then my mom would pick us up. So I saw her a lot. And then once I was self-employed, like working all the time, like entrepreneur, like that's all I cared about when I was like 18, like those college years. That's when I like I lost my connection with like my childhood friends.
Would you say that you were like spiritually bankrupt at that time because you're so busy chasing the money?
Yeah, I didn't even know what spirituality was at that point.
What does spirituality mean to you?
A connection to something higher than yourself. So it could be like your higher self, the universe, God. Everyone has a different word. The universe and God definitely is what resonates with me the most. But through different practices like the cannabis meditation or breath work, I feel like it just brings you to an altered state where you're able to feel oneness with the universe. And it's like such a beautiful experience.
So at times when, obviously everybody has their ups and downs when they're happy and they're sad. How do you get out of a bad state of mind? Do you just continue to do breath work? Do you exercise? Do you do cannabis?
Exercise is extremely important. I find that when I stop exercising, like my mental health goes to shambles. So just always moving the body, always trying to get outside as much as you can. Breath work, so important. I haven't done my own session, like gone to a session since December, and I know I'm overdue. You could just like feel it. For me, I really used to have really bad eating habits, and I was an emotional eater, and I grew up on nothing but processed foods. So a big part, like breath work for me completely changed the way that I take care of my body. And now that I have a connection to my body, like anything that doesn't feel good, like I just avoid at all costs.
Who would you say you hang around with the most and why do you hang out with them?
My newest girlfriends. So I just recently got into like the Scottsdale industry. I work in hospitality at 7. I'm a cocktail waitress there. And then I met this girl, Emma. She's been a rock for me for like the past 2 months. But I've just really been hanging out with my girlfriends so much. I didn't have like I said, the deepest connections with women growing up. I definitely had a lot more men around me growing up. So I've always felt a lot more comfortable around men.
Why did you choose men over women? Was that a choice or is that just something that attracted to you?
I think that was just what I was used to. So I had my 2 older brothers. They were the closest to me, my dad. And then I actually went to a military school in New Mexico for a year and a half. And it was mostly men. Like the ratio was 8 guys and 2 girls. Yeah, that was definitely an experience. So it was just my environment. Like I've just been very like men, like I don't know. Women, on the other hand, like they used to scare the fuck out of me. But now that I have girlfriends, like I honor those relationships so much, and I'm so grateful for the women that I have in my life now because they've given me more love than any man ever has, like in my whole entire life in these last 2 months.
Do you feel like that's because women understand you better than men?
I think it was my own thing to where I was just blocking myself from being able to have like deep, meaningful relationships with women. And I also last year and like the years prior to that, I was in not the best relationship. So I feel like when you're not with the right person, the good qualities about you aren't really the ones that are shining. So it's very hard to attract women into your life. So if you find that you're like, damn, I wish I had girlfriends, you definitely need to like consider who you're with in a relationship with, because when you're with someone that's just like doesn't want you to shine or like doesn't want everyone to see your light, it's just so depressing. And like you can't attract friends that way. You can't keep friendships. I feel like I sabotaged so many relationships with women like when I was in that relationship. That wasn't good for me.
Do you feel like most women intimidated you because it was like a never-ending beauty pageant?
No, not at all. I don't know what it was. I just was like scared. It was just really hard for me. And I just always, I don't know, I need to dig deeper into that. But I think it's maybe I experienced trauma with women like growing up as well.
Makes sense. So like you said, you have a lot of experience more being around men. Is that why it kind of excites you more to have men in the breathwork class? Because it's usually the minority of the group?
Mm-hmm. It definitely excites me just because it's cool to see men just like want to connect more with their bodies, and like they don't have this huge ego. Like they're able to like connect with their emotions, and they like understand what somatic breathwork is. And even if you don't understand it, a lot of people come into it not knowing any idea about what it is. But I have so much respect for any man that comes to a session, because it's not an easy thing for a man to do the majority of the time.
You grew up in a Hispanic home. Do you still constantly go to Mexico back and forth?
So I actually haven't been there in years, but this past December, one of my cousins passed away in an accident. So I had to go to Bavispe, and I haven't been there in probably like 8 years, 10 years. And I completely saw it in a different light. It's so beautiful. There's so much healing there, and there's also so much pain there. So I've definitely, after going back and revisiting, I almost connected like so much ancestral trauma with past experiences that I had that I didn't even realize that I was releasing. Yeah, it was definitely interesting going back. And I realized how much pain the women in my family carry. I feel like there's just a lot of depression and sadness in like my family line. And
do you feel like some of that pain and trauma is like embedded in your DNA? Like it's passed from your mother and your grandmother?
Yeah, I for sure believe that 100%. And there is so many sessions that I've done to where it felt like I was releasing pain that didn't belong to me, or I was screaming and it didn't sound anything like me. Like sometimes when you get to that level in sessions and you're open to it, you're able to release like ancestral trauma and like deep stuff.
So do you feel like a lot of your family there, they kind of look at you like you had better opportunities than they did? Do you feel like maybe they might be bitter, or they're actually happy that you got to go to the U.S.?
I don't necessarily know how they feel. I just know that I'm very grateful for the life that I've been able to have, because we definitely, like me and my cousins, definitely grew up a lot differently. We definitely have different opportunities. But I know they're all so loving. And it's like they're a big reason, part of the reason why I like try to work hard is because I literally want to be able to provide for like my whole family.
So when times are tough, you know, you feel like quitting, what is your why? Like, why do you keep going?
Definitely just other people. Like I love seeing other people happy. That's definitely my why. And just living in the moment, being present, not taking life for granted. I think one of my favorite things that my friend said about me is that she said I live my life every day like I just got out of jail. So I feel like that's just what life is about. Like, don't take life for granted. Like, you never know when it's going to be gone.
Your mental health these days, do you feel like it's the best it can possibly be? Do you feel like it can be better?
It could definitely be better. I haven't been on my workout grind, and I could see that affecting me a little bit, but I've definitely been happy. I've been allowing myself to have a lot more fun. I feel like all of last year I was just focused on like healing, inner work, self-work, and that's all I did. And now that I have friends and like people to share experiences with, I feel like it's just been a lot more fun recently.
Has there ever been a point in your life where you felt like you're going through an identity crisis?
For sure. I feel like definitely before I found breathwork, I just never knew who the fuck I was. And when you're living in your head and you have no connection to your body, it's literally impossible to even like know who you are.
How did your first breathwork how did you get introduced to that?
So they do a 4-day facilitator training, and I knew this girl who was going through the training, and on the last day of training, they have a public session. So I went to the public session. She posted an Instagram story and I saw, and that's when I was like getting into healing, and I recently heard about breathwork on a podcast. So I was like, okay, I'm definitely signing up. And it was at a backyard in Scottsdale, and it's actually where I did my facilitator training too. It was like a huge backyard with like 50 people, but there's a video of my session as well, which I'm so grateful for. But it was just like the biggest release. I just remember crying so much, like, and the feeling you have after, it's the best high. You're really like high on your own supply, and you're so excited to live life after. And I just remember like feeling like the biggest sense of relief, like so much weight was lifted off of my shoulders.
What kind of weight would you describe that as?
Definitely like self-doubt, any fears that I was carrying. Is a lot of like old beliefs or like old thoughts that I had about myself. I had like a member in my family always call me ugly growing up, and that was definitely embedded in me on like a really deep level. And I just always believed that, probably till like a year ago. I just always thought I was ugly because he said that. And it's like you don't even realize like these subconscious beliefs that you carry.
I see. So did that also affect how you kind of felt towards the men you were attracted to?
Oh, for sure. That like, I feel like I didn't really have like self-love or self-worth. And then it was always just about like pleasing the man and like doing anything for the man and like never like giving yourself love. Like that's not something I did. I definitely was not like in the healthiest relationships as a teenager, in, like my 20s. And I feel like that definitely affected it.
So how would you describe most of those relationships? Were you like buying a guy a PS5 and he just was blocking your calls?
No, it was more just like me giving so much love, even if I'm not getting it back, or staying somewhere where I know it's not benefiting me at all.
Did you feel like you had to fix those men in your life?
No, I feel like the men that I was with are so like hard-headed that there was like, I don't know. I never want to like tell someone what to do either. I kind of just let people do their own thing.
Well, coming from an old school Hispanic home, I would imagine that that's kind of what most Latin women do, right? They just throw something like a chancla.
Yeah.
And then, oh, okay, like this is what I'm supposed to do. Like,
I definitely did experience like a lot of anger for sure. And just like always being, it was just always so dramatic. And I don't want that anymore. Like I just want peace. I want it to be chill. I don't want fighting, resentment. I think that was a big thing in my past relationships. We just like carry so much resentment and like never get over the past. And it's not good. It's not good.
have you made amends with a lot of them that you probably had bad endings with?
Yeah, I feel like we're all cool. We're all civil. Definitely like my first boyfriend from high school. We're super cool. We never really talk, but I don't know. We have love for each other. We respect like the time that we had together and we were so young. But like you said, you learn the most from your mistakes. And I feel like, yeah, I made a lot of mistakes in my early 20s. And now it's just like, I don't know. I'm just happy for those experiences.
Was there ever a point when you thought like, oh, I want to get married and have a kid with one of them?
Yeah, for sure when you're in it, but you're just so young. It's just like, I don't know. I thought that about like every guy I've ever been with, yeah.
Was that difficult to let go of?
Maybe at first, but then at the end of the day, you realize like that's not your person. And I was never feeling that great. So it's like, that's not how I want to feel either.
Did you express wanting to have a kid with those guys?
I never wanted to have a kid like right at this moment or like anytime soon. So that wasn't really a topic of conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. They knew I wanted kids in the future, but it was never like, we're going to have kids.
I get you, yeah. Cause
I'm kind of like, I'm very go with the flow. Like, I'm just like, yeah.
It makes sense, yeah. Because I know sometimes when some girls are like, I want to have a kid like now. And I think that probably causes a lot of trauma to some guys. They're like, oh, wait, you actually want an answer like now. Like, okay, so we're doing this now.
Yeah, I'm definitely not ready. I'm not ready for a kid anytime soon.
Okay.
I'm happy. Never been pregnant.
I see. No, that makes sense. Yeah, because sometimes I know that, you know, I'll hear that across from other people. They're like, yeah, she said she wants to have a kid, and then they break up. I don't think I realized how serious that was until some girl actually told me, where I'm like, oh, you actually want to have a kid like tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, it didn't work out with that person, but still, it was just more like the first time I heard that, like, it was kind of like the world changed completely differently. And I feel like that was also something that was very hard to let go of, where, it was like somebody said that, oh, they want to have a kid, and then literally the same day, like, we're not together, like, just ran off. And I think that caused a lot of trauma. Mm-hmm. You know, it was definitely something that was extremely difficult to let go of, even though it's been like 10 years. Yeah. But it was just something where hearing that, you know, and then they were serious. Yeah. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just saying this just to say it. Like, you know, this girl said it about 4 times. And yeah. I'm like, okay, so this is actually going to happen. And then, you know, it didn't work out. The girl just ran off and ended pretty badly. But still, it just kind of, I felt like I carried that type of trauma into other relationships after that. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like that was somewhat of a similar experience with you, with some bad experiences you had? Yeah, I definitely saw like a repetition with certain patterns or just attracting certain people. And yeah, it's hard to get away from it for sure. Sometimes it's just like an addiction. And it's like, for me, I feel like I was always this way as a kid. Like, I never liked to be told no. I always wanted to do like whatever I wanted. So I feel like a big part of it for me is just like always winning them over and always doing whatever to like get them back if we broke up. And then it's like I would let go and then move on. And it's like they always come back. And then it was just like the cycle over and over again. But it's hard to get out of it when you're in it. But then when you're out of it and see it from like a bigger perspective, you're like, holy fucking shit. That was like not good. Do you feel like you may have ruined a man's life? No, not at all. It's nothing that dramatic. I feel like, no. Because I mean, like you said, you made amends and stuff. So
Yeah.
at least for the most part, like it's better to have a happy, ending than, a horrible one. Because I feel like most people, and I see, especially a town like this where, you go around and people start to alter their image differently. They'll like change their hair color like 4 or 5 times. They'll get plastic surgery and stuff. And sometimes you're just like, what is enough?
So how many times have you been to Scottsdale now? Because I know you're from California.
I've lost count, but I came here back and forth so many times for the past 10 years.
Okay.
So I've already kind of experienced, because I started coming here when I was already 21. So I remember all my friends transitioned from the college scene to working at bars.
So what have been like the biggest differences or similarities you've seen between like Scottsdale and California?
Well, definitely I feel like this is a bigger party environment than what I'm used to seeing at home. Like we don't have all these places in a row where there's like bottle service.
Yeah.
Like we have some places that have bottle service. Like I live in Orange County.
Yeah.
So there's like one nightclub, but the thing is, like, I feel like over here it's extremely concentrated.
Yeah.
And everybody here, because the cost of living is a lot cheaper. Like it's not cheap, but it's a lot cheaper. It's like, so I'll see someone brag about their penthouse and I'm like, oh, how much do you pay for rent here? And I'm thinking it's like $10,000 a month. And they're like, oh, it's like $3,500. And I'm like, dude, what? And there's like a 3-bedroom thing. And I'm like, dude, like, of course, I'd probably be living like that too. But, that was kind of like the thing when I grew up, mainly in the 90s and the early 2000s, right? So it's like during those times, credit was so easily available. Interest rates are lower than they ever were. Everybody was living rich. So it's like nobody wanted to go to Arizona at the time like how they are now.
Yeah. Because
back then it's like, oh, dude, if all sucks, you just move to Arizona. You're like, oh, dude, that's like horrible.
Yeah.
And I grew up hearing that, thinking that like, oh, I never want to go to that place. The first experience I had here, actually, I was working at a door-to-door sales company with my friend. Well, first I got introduced to it at college. There's a guy with a table. It's kind of like, when they have you sign up for a credit card. He's like, dude, you'll make $30,000 a summer. I'm like, what do I do? Just knock on doors. And I'm like, yeah, this sounds stupid. And I didn't do it. But my mom and dad were arguing, or they were actually, my dad was. My mom was. She was like, I need you to move out of the house. I'm like, why? It's like, you're just pissing me off, because it had something to do with cooking. Like I wanted to eat clean and like grilled chicken and I didn't really understand the cost of groceries at the time. I'm transitioning into adulthood. I'm like 19, and you're like, I want grilled chicken. I can't eat like basic food, whatever she kept making at the time. So I was like, whatever. I'm gonna move out. So then I took that job and I went to Virginia Beach, and I thought Virginia Beach was gonna be like Newport Beach, like what I'm used to. So I go there and I'm like, where are all the surfers? And like, where are the waves? And they're like, and all I saw was Confederate flags, and it's either you're black or you're white. This is the first time I've ever experienced something like that, where it's like the black people over here and the white people are over here. And then whatever, I kind of like ended that. And then that was like a summer. So the summer ended. And then the next year we had to kind of do like a preseason. And there was a manager, his name was Danny Pesci. So he's like, hey, we're going to go to Arizona. And I'm thinking, I'm going to do things the right way, because like it's a Mormon company. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm going to like not drink anymore, not smoke. And then he's like, we're going to Arizona State University. And I'm like, I have no idea what it is. I didn't do research, but I brought my camera, right? So I bring my camera and I go there, and he takes me to this place called The View, which is 922 place now. But, and he introduced me to this guy named Parker, and he had his girlfriend Felicia. And we're just like, why is this guy so ripped and shredded, and his girlfriend's extremely hot? We're just like, what the hell's going on here? It's like, and I'm like, how do these people afford to live like this? Like, this is school. Like, it's just like 12 stories. And this is when it wasn't regulated. Yeah. And I'm just like, what the hell's going on? It's like, and it was the U of A ASU football game. Like, so I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea how crazy people go. Cause like I grew up in California. Like there's always something to do. There's the beach, the desert, the mountains. People don't get this excited over sports or college sports. And this was the first time I'm seeing like everybody get together and they're all just drinking. Every room was partying. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And like, I was able to walk in every room with a camera and everybody accepted me. They're like, oh, camera guy, come here. Yeah. And there's loud music everywhere. And like, nobody really made you feel out of place. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to leave this place, So I kind of kept going back and forth at this place. And, once everybody kind of turned 21, they all kind of stopped going to the house parties and they all started working in the Scottsdale scene. And I feel like that kind of transitioned a lot, seeing them change. Like obviously people mature, but I know they kind of like broke up and kind of came back together. And I definitely saw, some of my friends, like they just started neglecting things. They got evicted. They just didn't really keep up with their finances. Some people kind of went back and forth. Then eventually people left. And like, I feel like right now, the only person who kind of stuck around is just Dennis. Everybody else kind of, they just left. Like there was another guy, he pretty much got all of them into this environment where it's like, he got all of them jobs. And then I know he had some bad experiences too, because he was the general manager at a place. I think he went through like a really, really bad breakup. I think apparently the girl tried to take his dog and stuff and took him to court. And I didn't know all those things were going on, you know? So
Scottsdale is a wild town. Like, I didn't even realize how crazy it was until like I actually got into the industry. Like, I knew it was crazy, but like the past 2 months of like working in Scottsdale have been like so fun and just very eye-opening.
Yeah, because I remember the first time, you know, he worked at this place, American Junkie. I think it's this one right here. I don't know what it was, where it was, but I know it was somewhere around here. And he's like, yeah, you're going to go on this party bus and it's free. And I'm like,
I used to do that.
And this was the first time I came to Scottsdale.
Yeah.
Like, the first time I came here, you know, it's like, it's a bar. I was already 22, so I'm like, okay, I've been to a bar before, but he's like, whatever. And you're able to bring your camera. So I'm always the center of attention when I had my camera, and it was different. So I go on this bus and I'm seeing all these like middle-aged women partying, but they're dressed like in their 20s. I've never seen that before, you know, and I'm just like, what the hell's going on? And then there's like some kid next to me. He's like, you know, my age. He's like, these guys make $100,000 a year, like they were millionaires.
Yeah.
And I'm like, my dad kind of makes that. We don't live like this. Like, dude, we're kind of like trying to stay above the water when it comes to bills at $100,000 a year. But these people are like so excited about it. And, you know, I kind of asked some other people, like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? Like, oh, those are minimum wage millionaires. I'm like, what's a minimum wage millionaire? Like, like you can live large off $30K. And I thought about it where I'm like looking at the cost of living, like, you know what? You kind of were right at that time. It was 2011. So the cost of living was a little bit different. But I just remember going to that and seeing that. And, you know, I'm on this party bus and I'm just seeing all these, like, I guess they call them cougars and sugar daddies. And that's like a big thing out here. And, you know, I was just kind of confused. I'm like, I never went partying with my mom like that. Like, you know, oh, let's do some shots with my mom at like, you know, this loud environment. And I remember Riff Raff was playing and I'm just like taking pictures of all this stuff. And I did that for about like 4 or 5 years, not just in Scottsdale, but, you know, in the backyard parties and stuff. And like, I saw a lot of other people mature. I definitely saw a lot of people's lives. So like, I have a lot of photos of Dennis. I have a lot of photos of everybody but myself. And I think that also brought a lot of trauma too, because I definitely have a lot of roots here that I definitely had a huge identity crisis. Because to shorten it up, I used to think I was mad at the world, but in reality, I was kind of mad at myself. There was a lot of self-acceptance where I'm just like, dude, this is so chaotic and crazy. Like, let's record people just doing stupid shit. And at the time, you know, like we don't really think of what's going on. We're just like, oh, drink this, do this, and like smoke this, and like, oh, it looks cool. I want to make it look like the movies. All I cared about was making things look cool. All these people had all these cool memories, but there really wasn't any memories of myself. So I just remember like freaking out because I'm thinking I'm over here like orchestrating chaos. I'm over here like instigating these things, but like this is kind of how this town was. I just was here, but I amplified it. But I felt for a while like, oh, I'm just like, you know, I'm a bad influence right now. And I remember after 4 years into doing it, I just kind of went through a really, really bad identity crisis where I'm just like, I'm not feeling okay. I'm not happy. You know, where am I? Because now I'm trying to let go of this platform I built. It was a YouTube channel, and you know, it wasn't like huge, but it was huge enough in an environment where it's like if I went to Taco Bell, like the whole Taco Bell would be filled up. Like if I put, oh, I'm going to this place, like it would be filled up. And to have that kind of power at like 22, 23 years old, nobody really gives you a guidebook on how to feel or like how to go about that. So in a way, it's like when you have it and there's all these girls trying to talk to you and stuff, and only like one of them really wanted to talk to me for who I was. And it was kind of confusing because I felt like she saw me better for like who I was. And it was like a love-hate relationship with that where I'm like me? Like, what do you see in me? It's like, she didn't really know who I am, and I didn't really know who she was. Like, she was like 18 and I was 22, so she was a lot younger. But I just remember like feeling kind of different because most of these kids that would come, like, it was all these different age ranges where it's like, you know, there's like someone's dad coming up to you and just like, that's so cool. Like, you have this cool job. And I'm like, I don't even know what to make of this, dude. Like, why are you even at this bar? Like, you're like older than my dad. Like, I'm not used to seeing that, you know? And it's like, oh, I'm divorced. You know, my wife took the house and my kids are at school somewhere. Like, I don't know what they're doing. Either way, it's like, you know, and it's like, okay, well, I guess, you know, where are you originally from? They're from out of state. They moved here because it was cheaper living. So I was like, okay. And it just, everything kind of felt like things were kind of falling apart in everyone's lives, and I'm still documenting it. And everyone's feeling like, you know, oh, I still got it together. Like, I got this cool thing. And it's like, relax, dude. High school's over. Let it go. Yeah. Like, who hurt you? But at the same time, everyone was kind of coping with drugs and alcohol. And I was also on the same boat where, I mean, I wasn't really doing so much of that because I had like things to look out for. I had people to kind of watch over because I brought other people with me. So I've always kind of felt like I'm the responsible person. Like, all right, I'm not going to drink too much. I'll have 1 or 2 shots. But to kind of go back on point, being in Scottsdale, it definitely changed my psyche of things where at first it is what it is. You can't change it. Like the sun's going to go up with or without you. And I remember at first I'm like, dude, did I like create all this chaos? Like, no, dude, it was just a hectic environment. That's how it was. Like, like someone told me, it's like, you're very narcissistic thinking that way. Like, dude, you didn't do all this damage. And I felt like I did a lot of damage at the time, and it was difficult for me to let go of, because I saw other people's lives kind of get ruined temporarily. I don't want to say all the time, but you know, it's like, oh, you're destroying your life. Like, did I cause that? Like, did I make this girl feel like she needed to get plastic surgery and stuff because I took pictures of these other girls? And like, in a way, like when you're in an environment and like people are seeing flashes going around, like everybody wants to feel good about themselves, right? Like everybody wants to look like the celebrity. And I feel like when I first started, that's kind of what I wanted. I was like, because I actually worked in certain productions in Hollywood, so I kind of got put into this environment where I learned how to use these tools at the time, and nobody knew how to do this stuff. Like back then, cameras were horrible on your phone. Social media was like, there was no algorithms and stuff. So like every time I posted something, it would just immediately go viral, and I'm like, dude, this is crazy. And you know, I was like one of the first pioneers at that, where it's like, oh, I'm taking professional looking pictures, and all these other kids, like, you know, I didn't understand what a trust fund baby was or a mobster brat, like people coming from like money, and like some of it's clean money, some of it's dirty money. But I just was like, how do you afford to live in like these luxury apartments and like on your own? And then I didn't know that, oh, okay, these people have like rich parents that are politicians and stuff. And you know, staying in this kind of environment, I felt like I saw these people where they were all still in pain. Even they had money, it's like you could still kind of understand pain. It takes pain to understand pain. But at the time, I didn't feel any sympathy. I'm like, how do you feel bad for somebody who has, you know, drives a luxury car? It's like, oh, you know, this kid, he's got a bunch of money, but his parents just they don't pay him because they love him. They pay him to go away. It's like, oh, go pretend to make something in your life. Like, go do this. And, you know, okay, he looks the part, therefore he is the part. But in reality, it's like he's here drinking excessively. I mean, if you drink a little bit and stuff here and then go partying, like, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world. Everybody has to go hang out with their friends. But every time I would come here, it's like, it's always someone's birthday. It's always somebody's birthday. Yo, it's my boy's birthday again. And it's like, oh, like I literally fucked so many girls. And it's like the same thing where it's like this never ending cycle of just like this dick measuring contest.
It's insane. I remember, like, I just recently met this person, and me and my friend Emma ran into him. And it's so crazy to me that the first thing that people want to brag about is how they got fucked up like this weekend and got champagne from Toca Madera. And it's like we have like 3 minutes of like communication right now, and like
even on the way in the elevator, remember that guy?
Yeah, it's like the guy, we went up the elevator and this guy was like, how's it going? We're like, it's good. And what'd he say?
I'm so fucked up.
Yeah, I was like, I'm so drunk. And then talking about how was coked out playing basketball, almost going into cardiac arrest. I was like, yep, that's Scottsdale for you. And then like being back in the industry, I'm like, holy fuck, people like love cocaine here, and it makes no sense to me. Like, it's dipped in acetone. It's so gross. It just like makes me feel disgusting. It creeps me out.
And I felt like I kind of had that identity crisis, you know, because like being in that environment, and then like you kind of want to get away from it, but you're in it. It's like, you know, when you live close to it, I remember staying at certain people's places. Yeah,
and it's like when you're experiencing it at a young age too, like it's like you don't know what's right or wrong. Like your brain's not developed. And I keep telling everyone, like, I'm so happy I went into the industry when I was like 25. Because if I would have been in the industry when I was a teenager, like I feel like I would have self-sabotaged and like fucked up some shit for sure.
Especially here, you know, because like
it's dangerous, like being so young, like 18, 19, like working in those environments. Just even like going out at that time, I like couldn't imagine like working in it.
Because you don't feel like you have friends, you just feel like they're acquaintances, but you have to learn the difference between that. And I feel like as a kid, you don't understand that right away. You just feel like everyone's your friend. And like you said, you want to have acceptance. But I've noticed a lot of people that always stuck around, they've always had like some absent type of parent or family member. Like they didn't have a dad or a mom, or probably both. And I felt like I didn't understand that kind of pain until like I got into my 30s, where it's like, oh, because I had both parents. You know, I never really thought about it. I'm like, oh, this is what this person is experiencing because they're in this environment, and they're coping more because there's like a void, you know, because like if I pick, and I'm grateful for that, like if I call my dad or my mom, like I still have that ability to do that. Especially, I don't think I really appreciated my family that much until I got stuck in Puerto Rico. Like I was stranded there. This airline, they lost all my clothes and they lost all my luggage and my camera equipment. So I was there with nothing. And this was like right after the hurricane in 2018. These people were they're already upset. Like, oh, there's an American here. And they saw Trump throwing paper towels and they're looking at me like, get out of here. Like, we literally just had 6 months of no electricity, no running water, there's no food. And like, your president just laughed at our situation.
Yeah.
And now you're just here trying to, launder money and like do real estate because they're just gentrifying the area. And that's kind of what was going on. Like, you saw it was in your face. Like, there's a billboard smashed in all these houses and there's like 6 abandoned houses and there's like a big mansion. Like, the poverty line was completely different there. But the weird part is I felt like it was still more expensive to live in those poor places than it was in Arizona because it's still a US dollar. So to them, I mean, I could be wrong, but just what I saw on Zillow when I was there. And for those people, when there's no source of income, like, I could see why they were extremely upset. Like, there's no work there. Like, 50% of the population is already on unemployment, and then when I came home, like, luckily I found all my stuff. Like, they got my stuff back. But that experience, not speaking Spanish, and it's Puerto Rican Spanish, so it's different. They don't pronounce R's, they pronounce them as L's.
Yeah.
And I just remember getting more frustrated, and I'm just like kind of stuck here. I was there for like about 5 weeks, give or take, and we were trying to work on this project so we can go to the next job. So I'm finding this airline to get my stuff, and the airline never found my camera equipment. The airline gave it to some random person in Belgium. The guy in Belgium emailed me like 2 months later, and I was like, hey, how do you want to get your stuff? Like, don't give it to the airline, and then I found some third-party company that delivers luggage. I got my luggage, luckily. I thought it was gone forever.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
And yeah, but because my dad talked to most of these people in Spanish, because the incident was in Spain, like, it was a Spanish airline. I had to go to France, but there was riots in France, so the airport kind of lost all the luggage during the riot. So it really wasn't the airline's fault, it was the airport. It was like, okay, now you're in France, and now you're going to Puerto Rico, where it was like this huge hurricane, and people were upset. So it really wasn't like the best of time to go. Luckily, I had my dad like, hey, my Spanish is horrible, can you translate to these people? And he's getting frustrated, but it's like, your parents get frustrated for you because they don't want to see you suffer.
Yeah.
And I felt like, okay, what would my situation be like if I didn't have my dad around? It was just like, or if he just didn't care. So I think those kind of situations made me really appreciate my family more. I'm like, okay, and I think having that type of relationship with my parent helped me not get caught in what's out here. Because I came out here willingly. Like, I didn't live out here. Like, some people, like, they kind of lived here, like how you grew up here. And like, this is just something you're used to. Like, oh, you just saw it. And like, where I grew up, it was middle class. And they're like, you knew where the poor parts were, you know where the rich parts were. And you kind of feel a little bit out of place sometimes. Because when you go to the ghetto parts, it's like, all right, like, you're not in a gang, you're not from here. And like, you're not supposed to be there sometimes. But if you're with somebody that like, all right, cool, you can go here, but you can't go to the other part of town because we don't like those guys. You go to the rich part of town and it's just like, everyone's just judging you for like, all right, well, you kind of have some mediocre clothes, all right, like, your car, this. It's like, all right, whatever, like, oh, I'm gonna raise my hand and say I'm the idiot here because this is all my parents' stuff. You go do you, I'll go do me. We don't all have to be friends here. But when I came here, most of those times it was like everybody accepted me, and I never really had that, so I kept coming back because it was like I was automatically the celebrity in the room because I had a camera. It was also, like I said, it was a lot of self-acceptance at the time where I didn't know how to handle that. It was like love and hate at the same time, where I'm like, why do these people like me so much? Like, I'm better than you, but why am I better than you? It's like, oh, you're from Cali, that's so dope. It's like, I mean, I grew up there, but at the same time, like, I think that also fueled my ego a lot more, especially being younger.
Yeah. Where
it's just like, oh, all these people listen to me. I snap my fingers and they'll do this. And that was an extremely, I want to say, terrifying experience because like, it's strange because like, you could still see it's a person, but like, you kind of lose those humanistic points when everyone's drunk and stuff. It's like, all right, well, jump off the roof and break this table. All right, cool. And all these girls are just like, flashing the camera and like twerking on top of tables. And, it's like, I don't even have to say to do that. It's like, you just get one of them to do that. They're all going to try to like, oh, well, I'm going to do this better. And it's just like,
nah, like monkey see, monkey do.
So yeah, and especially being in that environment where I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of a cool place.
Yeah.
But people grow up, they mature, and it's just like,
do you feel like it's the same way now with like content or like how people react when you walk into a room?
I feel like it depends on who I'm around. The age range is obviously different, but I mean, maturity doesn't come with age, it comes with experience. I feel like there's still a lot of people my age that are still trying to relive their, their early childhood and their early 20s. I can see through it. I don't really affiliate myself with it. I don't want to say like I'm for or against it. It's just like, you do you. Like, I don't see them as bad people. I just see them as good people looking for love in all the wrong places, just how I was. I luckily found something to get away from that. And I feel like certain people that I cared about didn't and that are still doing it. We're both looking at each other differently. Like, they think I'm a moron, but I also think you're a moron. And you're 30 years old. Like, let it go. Like, who are you trying to prove yourself to here, man? And especially a lot of these like people who are super in a fitness right now, or it's like, I'm not trying to pick on the fitness people, but like when you're in competition mode for 365 days out of the year and your body fat is less than like, 8% for 365 days, like, and you're on all these different types of steroids, like, you're body's gonna give out.
Yeah, no, that makes me so sad.
And like you see people age, like, dude, you're 30, like you look like you're 40. Like, you know, some of my friends are bald, some of them have heart problems, some of them can't get an erection anymore. But like, you know, you look at them like, oh, you're in the best shape of your life. And it's like, dude, like relax, man. Like just let it go. Like, let's go find something else to do. Like, I know I like to work out, don't get me wrong, but sometimes like I know my diet's not always the best.
Yeah.
Like, I have a weakness for carbs.
Yeah, we're all human. That's fine.
I'll try the best I can, but I know sometimes I'll go to like a family party and it's like, all right, cool. There's pan dulce, there's burritos and stuff. And it's
I definitely indulge. I love a good party. I'm eating all the food.
But, you know, like seeing a lot of people get lost here, it's kind of like, especially when you build a relationship with some of these people, like I felt like for the longest time I had to save certain people. And I had a lot of burden on myself with that, where I'm like, this person is lost and did I cause that? And of course, some other people were like, dude, you didn't do any of that. Like that person was messed up before you even got in there. But I felt like, did I amplify? Because I took pictures to the point where it's like, I can make a biography of certain people here. And I don't even think they know that. There's certain people that I film the most that like, and there's some people I don't even talk to anymore. I would like to have another conversation, but I think because things got so chaotic between their own lives.
Do you think the most chaotic thing was like substances or relationships?
Everything.
Yeah, losing sense of self.
It was also their sense of self too, because I know, like I said, a lot of them didn't have certain parents in their life. So it made me appreciate, you know, I had my great-grandparents, my grandparents, and my parents on both sides. Not my great-grandfather on my mom's side because he passed away. No, I'm sorry. On my dad's side, I didn't have the great-grandfather. On my mom's side, I did. That was actually my first traumatic loss when I was 13, and I lived with him at the time. You know, he died when he was, I believe, somewhere in his late 80s. You know, living with him, that was like my first experience with loss, where I'm like, oh man, this hurts. You know, it's like, but he lived a long life. But I saw that type of transition from a household, hearing my great-grandmother talk all the time, and my mom, where it's like, there's two different types of females you're around now, because like I feel like being around that is what's going to mold how you build a relationship with a woman. My great-grandmother was always super old school. Don't date an American girl. Like, they don't make their own tortillas. And I'm like, we don't need to do that anymore. Like, just the stupidest things where it's just like, yeah, they're just going to spend all their money on luxury clothes and cars. And like, they don't take care of their kids. Like, I'm taking care of you. And like,
just
I think
all assumptions.
And I think she was kind of a little mad at my mom because my parents were separated at the time for the first like 6 years of my life, and they got back together. And I think I get it, where it's like some women are single moms, like they feel like they have to keep up with this persona, like everyone's against them in a way. So I think my great-grandmother was just like, no, they're like, they scare away the men in their lives. That's what they do. They scared them away. It's like everything was supposed to be catered towards certain men. I think because of that, her belief with that, and the younger generation, they're like, no, we're not going to do that. Like, we got credit cards now. And I think that generation, the way they think, like the old school generation, was more of, you know, they want to save because they were around like the Great Depression. Like, oh, we got to save, hoard. When we saw our parents, because I'd imagine your parents are somewhat of the same age as mine, they were frugal. I wouldn't say that they were like, oh, let's go spend like how our generation is, where it's like everyone's like flying, you know, they're in private jets. They're, you know, we're on like human beings. If you go back thousands and thousands of years ago, human beings weren't meant to be on planes, communicating through phones, you know, eating gummy worms and drinking soda and doing cocaine. Like, they died when they were like 30, give or take, from natural causes. And there was only like a few people to a village. Now it's like you can go on a phone. You have so much accessibility on Tinder, Bumble, SugarDaddy.com, seeking arrangements. You want to find an escort, you can find an escort. You want to find a date, you can. You know,
it's wild. I don't love any of that, honestly. I love like face-to-face like interactions, or just like, I notice that when I'm on the right path, or that I'm surrounding myself with the right people and not in toxic relationships, the right people just come into my life without any effortlessly. They just come into my life. And yeah, you just literally have to trust the universe, and the right people will come to you.
Oh, I get you. Yeah, especially like when you're in a toxic one, you don't know when it's toxic till you're out of it. It's like somebody has to pull you out. I was kind of in a toxic type of situation where there's like all these other girls telling me, like, dude, like, I think it takes a woman to understand a woman, and sometimes as a man you don't want to like accept that. But there was like one girl in my ear who didn't know who this girl was that I was dating, but she like was able to call her out like on every single thing, where I'm just like not seeing it. She's like, yeah, you know what, like, she blocked you because she wants you to chase her. And I'm like, what? Like, that makes no sense. Like, no, that's what she wants you to do. That sounds so stupid. stupid.
Yeah.
But it's just like, it was actually what that girl wanted. And what I found out is like, they both kind of came from a similar household where they both didn't have their fathers around. So I'm just like, this is just chaotic. And then, I started talking with that girl again, and then some other chaotic situation happened again. And then this girl was like, there's somebody else. I'm like, no, she said the guy cheated on her. Trust me, dude, she's going to go back to the same dude. Like, these girls are stupid. Like, she's like 21 years old. Like, she's stupid.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, no, there's no way. And then like, truth floats to the surface, and like, I saw her Instagram later on after she blocked me, and I'm like, oh, well, all right. And then like, the girl's best friend kind of came around and was like, look, dude, like, I'm sorry that happened to you, but that girl's a bad person. What do you mean? Like let it go, man. Like, that girl played herself. Like, don't feel sorry for her. She created her own like bad situation. But in a way, I was just kind of confused, where I'm like, I felt like it was still my fault in a way. Because like I said earlier, like, I kind of created this bad environment. I was going through identity crisis. My mental health was like the worst it ever was at that point. This girl kind of convinced me that everything was my fault. And it kind of was. I don't want to say like it was all her, but like, I was kind of like an in-shape person at the time when we met. And then I was like really fat, and I was eating gummy worms, and I'm over here freaking out, like, and she's saying crazy things like, I want to have kids, and like said it multiple times, like, okay, so this is really happening, and then like ran off, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess it's not. At first I'm like, oh, so is this all my fault? And they're like, not entirely, but there's certain times where people just go back and forth, where it's like, okay, I didn't really understand what that person was going through at the time, because we were both saying crazy things at the time.
How old were you at that time?
I was 25.
Okay.
So I was, as a male, like, when you turn 25, that's when you're finally getting access to the frontal lobes of your brain, so you're able to think differently. And I think when like someone else explained that too, when it comes to relationships with women, like if there's like a 3-year relationship, the man was only in the relationship one of those years, because it takes like 1 or 2 years to finally figure out like, oh, you love this person. Like, we were never in a relationship, but it was just more like there was like this constant back and forth where it's like, oh, okay, oh, but I'm gonna go here, and then all right, whatever. Like, it just never really like worked out, but there was something there.
And what are you wanting now? Are you like wanting a relationship and like kids and all that?
At the moment, I just kind of want to like figure my own self at the moment, because I don't want to like bring that trauma onto somebody else. It definitely was very difficult to let go of that kind of thing. I kind of neglected that after maybe a year into that. Like, I didn't really fix it. I just kind of like forgot about it, because like you don't think that you think you're over something because you don't think about it anymore.
But then it's not until you're like experiencing life or like with someone else to where all of that stuff starts coming up.
Yeah. And then what actually had happened was I was on a dance team, right? I do salsa and bachata. And
That's
one of my dance partners, she was a therapist. She was like a counselor, and she was older than me. She's 40, and I was 32 at the time. So this was a little less than a year ago. I just remember her. She's like, "Oh, I want to book a private." So a private is like $100, but we're on a team. So she booked a private. She's like, "I need a guy to go. Can you go?" Sure. I'm like, "All right." And then she booked another one, and I'm like, "Oh, she's booking all these privates. Like, she must be serious." Like, okay, I would get to go on a free ride, but I felt kind of bad. So I'm like, you know what? I'll buy the girl food. Like, she's paying for all these things, because they're more catered to her than they are to me. I'm just kind of there like a crash dummy, but I still get stuff out of it. So I was like, all right, cool, whatever. And then she explains to me, she's like, oh yeah, this guy dumped me on my birthday. And I'm like, oh man, that sucks, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I dumped on your birthday, so she was coping. That's what I figured out what it was. Like, she was like, oh, I want to be the best dancer. I need to like let go of my frustrations. And that's what it kind of came down to. And then she kind of asked me about certain things in my past, where I'm like, like, I didn't really think about that part for like, it's been like 8 years, I guess, in a way, somewhat around there. Like, I kind of just forgot about it. And like, she just asked me certain questions that made me think about it. I've always kind of looked for somebody to say it was my fault, and nobody ever said it was my fault. Like, nobody, not one person we were just like, it's her. And then even when I talked to her again, like, she said it was her fault, but she never like apologized. I never got closure because I never asked for it. And I think that's kind of how dance partner made me feel. She's like, oh, dude, you kind of just, she tried talking to you again and you just ignored her, and that's your fault. And I was like dumbfounded, like, wait, really? Like, everyone, you just said not to talk to her, and you're just like, that part is your fault. Of course she feels abandoned. Like, she didn't have a dad. Like, I mean, she did, but he ditched her when she was a young age. And I was kind of like, now I'm starting to feel all kinds of anxiety for no reason. And it just like hit me where I'm like, how do I get over this? We had to go to practice again the next week. And my instructor was like, you got to smile. And you have to smile like in the song. And what I didn't really understand, like, all right, let me translate the lyrics to this song. And it made it even worse, because like most of salsa and bachata is about heartbreak and betrayal. Yeah. And, my Spanish is horrible, but I didn't really pay attention to lyrics. And I'm like translating the lyrics, and it's like, all the women that betrayed me, we need to pursue this. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, what the hell's going on right now? I'm like really freaking out. Like, now I have to practice this routine for the next 4 months, because we have to go perform on a big stage. And now I'm just like, yeah, now this is kind of bothering me. How do I get past it again? And I made contact, and I knew immediately when I made contact, like, this girl's going to say like a mean message. And I started laughing. Like,
yeah.
Bro,
when was this?
January.
Okay.
No, actually December was the first time. So yeah, I made contact in December, and she's like, wrong number. And I'm like, no. I knew exactly that was going to.
Yeah, and you found who dis.
I was like, and I started laughing like so hard. I'm like, a sense of relief from like, okay, it's kind of like that was the rapport. It was like, this is what it was. Like that was normal. And then, you know, I kind of expressed how I felt, and she didn't say anything. I was like, whatever, you know, like there's only so much you can do, you know. And then when I did my performance, it was like a bigger performance. I wrote a letter where I was like, everything that kind of we went through, where it's like, hey, look, I just hope you're happy wherever you are. Like, I'm not trying to get into a relationship or anything. It's just more of like, I feel like at that time, we just were both in bad parts of our lives. Yeah. And we both kind of crossed paths with each other. And whether you felt the same way or you didn't, I feel like she would never tell me, because she just always hid it. So it's like, whatever, dude, like you're not going to admit it anyway. So what's the point of even asking? But I don't have any negative energy towards you. Like, and it's been, you know, 10 years. I felt like I wanted to explain that a long time ago, but I didn't. And now I kind of did. And then all she just said was, thanks for the message. Like, I feel like she wanted to say more, but like, I think like some people put up this like persona where like they have to be tough when they don't have to. It's like, okay, whatever. Like, I can't force somebody to do something they don't want to do. Like, there's only so much there's only so much you can push. And plus I don't want to be coming off like super clingy and shit. I was like, whatever, dude, like wish you the best of luck. I feel
happy. Like for myself, I always have to remind myself like this other person, because when I start, whenever I'm interested in someone, I feel like it just like consumes me. I can't get them out of my head. And then I always tend to take things a little bit more personally than I should. And I just always have to remind myself like, yo, this person has like this whole other life. Everyone has their own life. You have no idea what like people are going through every day. You have no idea what mental state they're in. It's like, you never know. You don't know if they're talking to someone right now. I always have to remind myself that.
Yeah, so in a way, it was just more like at that time, like I kind of apologized from like I didn't know what this person was going through. So I was like, you know what? I knew you were going through certain traumatic things in your life. I didn't really.
And not everyone has the tools to be able to like help someone else or like support them through that, or you just don't have the knowledge at all.
And I was freaking out. I was going through identity crisis, because it's like 1 minute you're like this YouTube celebrity, and then like you just delete your channel, and now this person is next to you, and you're like, you're freaking out. Like, dude, does this person like me, or does this person like my platform? Like, I just got rid of the platform, and this person's just kind of like looking at you like, are you okay? And like, I was definitely like, I would have left the situation too, because I was like not there in the head. So I apologize for that. I'm like, you know what, dude, like that was probably hard for you to see me like basically having a breakdown, to ambush somebody the way I did, because like she kind of came from somewhere else, and we're staying at a hotel, and when she left, I flipped out. Then like the truth went to the surface. She went to go see someone else, and then like that didn't work out, and then we're just like, now there's just this big fucking mess, and I'm like, I don't even know what to do. Obviously we both had to move on. Like, I think at that time I just started coping with photography even more. I'm just gonna be a really good swimsuit photographer. So I just kind of littered my like portfolio with like swimsuit photography, and I just kept practicing. And like 6 months into it, the girl like started making contact to come back, but I didn't know how to talk to her, because everybody kind of like I felt like they were telling me what I wanted to hear, not what I needed to hear, and they were like one-sided answers, like, oh yeah, you know, it's her fault, like, and it made sense, and then at the same time, it was still more like you weren't there for that experience. And plus, like, Snapchat was barely around. So, like, I documented the entire thing and I put it up. So, like, I kind of publicly humiliated the girl on my platform. And I didn't understand, like, if that caused any damage. But, I mean, you know, all of the mutual friends that we knew, they all said their 2 cents. But it seemed like it was aimed towards me. Like, hey, man, like, you're not in the wrong. But you already had a platform before she got there. Now she's trying to use it against you. Like, you know, what's wrong with you? Like, why would you do that? But it was just more like they weren't there. Like, they didn't see that it was kind of strange, you know? Like, and I think that's the hard part about being on like these platforms, is people see your best moments. They never see your worst moments. But even when they are seeing your worst moments, it's like they're just the audience. Like, they're not your friends. Like, they're just like, you know, when you see drama, like you want to see people like have chaos, and then they're getting more engaged with it. You're like, I thought these were my friends. It's like, no, they like, I felt like people were starting to instigate it to make it worse. Like, no, you should just like, let's make it worse. And like, are they trying to make it worse? Are they trying to help me? Like, what's going on? And, you know, I gave my channel to somebody else, and ultimately, like, it took me a while to figure out who I was, where I'm like, now I got to rebuild my name. Everything about me was just the craft. I felt like I was like, I guess spiritually bankrupt is a good word to put it, where like I never really had any attachment to who I was. I never had any self-acceptance. It was just always like, I got to be better than what I was last week. I was always performing. You know, it was always like, I got to have a better portfolio than this. I got to do something better than this. I got to make it look better than this. And it got to a point where it's like, I forgot about myself, and I never had a relationship with myself. It was always just trying to one up everybody everybody around me because
just accomplish.
And I think what it kind of came from was that moment I mentioned earlier where I was on that bus with the wrestling team where it's just like I had to prove that I wasn't that kid. Like I had to prove that, I'm not the reason why we lost, even though I was the reason why I lost, but I felt like, I can't let that happen again. Like I can't be me. A lot of people didn't like who I was because I was pushing this agenda where like I judged a lot of people for their work ethic. That's basically what it came down to, was just work ethic. Like it had nothing to do with money, had nothing to do with how many girls you hooked up with. It didn't have anything to do with your car or the clothes you wore. It was just who's going to outperform who. I didn't care if this kid was rich or poor. Like, dude, you're not on my level. You're not on my level. Get away from me. I built my own computer. I did the graphics. I did the photos. I did the videos. I'm not the best in the world, but I felt like I had to take a lot of this aggression towards a certain direction. And I felt like if you weren't on my certain wavelength, then get away from me. Like, go do something else. But like a lot of people wanted to learn from me. They were looking up to me and I didn't see that because I was always looked down on. So I'm just like, oh, these people want to learn from me. But in reality, it was just me looking down on myself. That hurt. It took me like to the age of 25 to see that, where I'm like, oh man, like it just, I didn't know how to really accept that. Now I kind of surround myself with the people to bring out the best in me, not the worst.
Yeah, it's so important. So important. I almost get like embarrassed of like the person I used to be, but it's like you have to give yourself grace. You didn't know any better, and then sometimes you just get stuck.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate some people are still stuck in those situations, but for the most part, like I said earlier, maturity doesn't come with age, it comes with experience. You just have to go through things in order to understand things.
Yeah, fuck up, make all the mistakes,
because not everyone's gonna like you, and you don't have to feel obligated to keep everybody you meet in your life for so long just because you've known them for a long time. Your network is your net worth, and you got to surround yourself with the people that bring out the best in you, not the worst. And I feel like we always feel obligated to keep people around because we've known them for so long. And usually those are the ones who are kind of bringing you down. I cut off a lot of people, and I didn't want to do that in like a negative way. It's just more like coming from a big party environment to something completely different. It just was, it was a big transition. They didn't want to accept it. They're just like, what, like, why aren't you going to go with us? It's like, well, I never thought that lifestyle was going to get old. It's like you go to an environment, there's all kinds of, I lived at one point, I was like in Hollywood Hills. I'm like, oh, we live in this cool house. There's a photo studio. There's a pool. There's all kinds of like blow and shit. And there's a bunch of naked girls all the time. Like, why would I want to like leave? And then you kind of get to a point where you're like, dude, I don't know any of these people. Who are constantly coming in and out of my house. Especially in California, people come and go all the time. Yeah. They go there, they try to be a dancer, model, actor, musician, whatever it is. And then they get flushed out, and then they come here, and then they get flushed out of here, and they go somewhere else. And they're like gypsies, they're nomads. They're just constantly like living somewhere else. And I used to think like, oh, these kids are rich. They got it made. And for a certain extent, yeah, they have some money here and there, but you don't know where that money's coming from. Yeah. Some of their parents are loaded. Some of them are taking equity of their house to fund their kids' stuff. And sometimes these kids just tend to think it's going to last forever. And then you're just like, they never took the first step. They just kind of like were there and like, oh, you're the camera guy. What do I do? Like, just tell me what to do. And I'm like, I don't even know how to tell you what to do. Came here trying to pretend to be you're the coolest person because you were like the prettiest girl in like North Dakota or something, or like the one guy who was good at sports growing up in the middle of nowhere. And now you're just here and you thought like, oh, I worked at Denny's and everybody said I should be like a celebrity, but it's like you took industry advice from people who are not even in industry. And when you kind of put yourself in that environment, when you move there, like people will take advantage of you. Like if you have money, people are going to take it from you. And I feel like it's similar here, like if you have money, people are going to be like, oh yeah, let's go get a bottle. Let's go get a table. Same thing over there. It was just more like, oh yeah, you go to this school and like, they'll teach you how to act better. And like, I don't know because I'm not a professional actor either. And like, you don't know, but like your psyche is based on the first people you meet. So sometimes like, especially you move here, like your psyche is going to be the first person you meet. And especially if you go to like a club or like a bar, like you're probably going to meet somebody who probably doesn't have the best interest for you, it's for themselves. But they'll probably like buy you a drink here and there. They'll hang out with you. They might go on a hike. But sometimes it's just like, you got to realize like not everyone's looking out for your best interest. You have to look out for your own and you have to learn to accept that. Nobody owes you anything. Yeah. And I feel like as a kid going into these environments by yourself without your parents, your psyche's different. Your thinking is different. You think everyone's going to be your friend. Everyone owes you anything, but it's like, they're going to do what they're going to do. You're going to do what you're going to do.
The world owes you nothing.
I know it's getting late. I know you got stuff to do. So I'm going to say that's going to wrap it up. Yeah, it was good talking to you, Where could people find you at?
I am Annalee.breathwork on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. I definitely want to start posting on TikTok more. I'm going to be doing some stuff on YouTube that I'm excited for. But yeah, Instagram's my main thing. And then I'm doing weekly somatic breathwork sessions in Arizona. That's just my passion. That's what I love to do. And they're always beginner friendly. So if anyone's ever interested in trying it out, feel free to reach out.
All right, cool. Nice having you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, cool.
Okay.